Welcome, everyone. The event is now live. John, please take it away.
Thanks, Victoria. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's live tech talk, from printing pains to process gains, how to level up clinical print and document workflows with output automation. This event was organized by the hardworking folks at MedCloud Insider, and it's sponsored by Vasion, provider of complete cloud-native automation platform designed to help organizations digitize content and automate business processes from capture to workflow, e-signature to storage. Thank you for your sponsorship. We couldn't be doing this without you. I'm John K. Waters, Editor-in-Chief of the Converge 360 Group of 1105 Media, and I'm joined today by output automation expert Ken Mickelson. Hi, Ken.
Hey, everybody.
So I want to tell you a little bit about our speaker today. During his decade and a half in IT, Ken has served as a network engineer, lead systems engineer, and enterprise architect. As a senior product manager at Vasion, he currently leads the development of the company's output automation offering, pursuing his passion for finding technical solutions for the complex problems inherent in supporting the modern health system. This is going to be a great conversation. I'm really looking forward to this, guys. But before we get going, I have a little bit of housekeeping to do. This Tech Talk is being recorded for later access. Keep an eye out for an email with a link to that recording. It'll be coming your way in the next few days. Our sponsor has provided some extra resources you won't want to miss. They're available now on your console. At the end of this conversation, we'll have a 5 to 10 minute Q&A. Please type your questions into the Q&A box as they occur to you. We'll do our best to get to all of them. Now I'm going to take just another moment to set the stage for what we'll be talking about today. So clinical print and document workflows have evolved dramatically from paper-based manual processes to highly automated digital operations that prioritize efficiency, security, patient engagement, and compliance. The success or failure of these systems impacts not only patient care, but organizational efficiency, regulatory compliance, and financial performance. So the million-dollar question is, and I mean that literally, are your document workflows keeping up with expectations? That's the question at the heart of today's conversation. So let's get started. First of all, Ken, I'd like to ask about the key trends you see currently driving the evolution of clinical print and document workflows in healthcare organizations.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you. So I think that as we've been speaking with customers about the things that drive them right now from their kind of overall strategic initiatives is, for one, digital first, right? So we want to move away from paper processes and manual steps wherever possible, and also cloud first, where we want to move away from having that on-premise infrastructure wherever possible. So that's that one kind of group. I think on the other side, there's also a desire to move away from manual processes. So as introducing automation as much as we can where it makes sense to do so. And lastly, just the newer trends in security, whether that's zero trust architecture and just that focus on making sure that we know who the user is and giving them appropriate access based on their identity rather than where they are physically within the network.
Okay, that's very interesting. How has the shift from paper-based and digital automated workflows impacted patient care? I mean, and organizational efficiency? How is this working for the healthcare organizations?
So, I mean, from one standpoint, I think that just using a personal experience, when you go into the doctor's office and you're in the waiting room and you have these forms to fill out and you're filling out the same information on multiple pieces of paper, right? And so I think that as we move away from that and we have interoperable applications that can pass data between each other and just digital forms where patients can fill out it before they even get to the doctor's office, like that type of stuff really helps to expedite the experience that the patient has in the clinic and make sure that they are having the best experience possible. I think from an organizational efficiency standpoint, there's cost savings when we reduce those manual steps that our clinicians have to take, and it also makes our processes more scalable and repeatable to automate them and to move away from those manual paper processes.
Makes sense. What are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing that organizations face when they're transitioning to automated document workflow?
Sure. Yeah. For one, I think just status quo. Right, you need to get your clinicians moving away from a workflow that they've maybe done for years at this point, right? And so that always presents a challenge. There's also the cost of implementation. A lot of times making changes like this can be expensive, and then just the complexity of the migration. And on that front, maybe I'll just share real quick how our output automation product would connect with a system like Epic or Oracle Health or other EMRs to act as that ingestion point and automation point to get that file where it needs to be in the format it needs to be in when it needs to be there, right? So as far as how that usually will go is the document will be created within an EMR, and this is an outbound process, right? And within the customer network, there would be a Vasion output automation service running that is connected to our cloud platform. It uses that connection to get information about what printers or other destinations exist within the customer environment. And it also has the ability to connect, as I think I mentioned, to your EMRs. And so your EMR will submit a file. It'll come to the output automation service. And then from there, it's able to begin the process of orchestrating the different automations that you might have. So that on the most simple front may be delivering that document to a printer and making sure that it gets there, or it could be handed off to be used in a workflow, or using the data within the document in a form, any number of things that we'll get into further in the conversation. But we use this to help overcome some of those challenges with that transition, because we use the built-in mechanics of your existing applications to extend the processes that you have, and to provide that automation that way.
Fascinating. So how do these automation tools contribute to improving regulatory compliance and security in clinical settings?
Yeah, well, I mean, so anytime that you're reducing manual steps, you're reducing the potential for human error, for one thing, right? So there's not less chances that someone's going to leave a document with protected health information on it laying around. And so from that aspect, there's the extra security in just automating, period. But then in addition to that, every step that's taken is audited, so you can look back and you can see what changes were made. We have options for retaining documents that have been used as part of a workflow, or printed as part of print job archival. And all those files can be indexed with metadata, so you can go back and search and find them, see what was actually on the printed page, and you kind of gain that insight that you definitely wouldn't have if someone's walking around with an actual piece of paper and handing it to someone else, or even just something that's too scattered and manual.
Okay, so the road to implementing digital document workflows must have a few potholes in it. What have you seen along your journey?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so just thinking of what we've come across as we've spoken with customers, for one, not doing adequate discovery before you make changes and fully understanding what you're changing. One of the, I talked about printing by, things scanning, faxing, any of those types of, I'll call them basic things that you often don't think about until you're, almost done with a project. But then if, say, that project involved moving an application to the cloud, well, now you need to get that print job from the cloud across the internet to a printer inside your own network, right? And so you have to solve that. And if you don't think of that type of thing ahead of time, then that can really cause problems. You have to scramble at the end to get a fix. So I think that's one. And then we talked about changing the status quo. I think it's inadequate training for the clinicians that you're working with as well, to make sure that they understand what they're doing or what they need to do with the new process. And then lastly on this too, I think not planning what metrics you want to track to know if what you're doing was successful or not. So I think defining that ahead of time so that you can then track it and follow through will help you to course correct as issues come up.
Fascinating. Yeah, these sound like slap of the forehead moments after you slip down into that pothole.
Totally. Right.
Okay. So how about how healthcare organizations ensure that their document workflows remain agile and adaptable to future technological changes? I mean, it was enough of an upgrade to go digital. Now what?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, we talked a little bit about the initiatives that a lot of health systems have right now. I think getting something that is cloud-based so that it has that ability to scale and the agility that's inherent in a cloud solution, I think is going to help with that. I think not overlooking the interoperability of the whatever application or solution that you're looking at, and making sure that it can easily work with the other applications that it needs to speak to. Because again, that's another thing that can kind of come back and catch you at the end, where you realize that you need to get data into this other application and you don't really have the means to do so. And then lastly, I think also just making sure that you have a plan and a system in place to regularly reassess what you're doing, because otherwise things can just kind of drift off. And if you're not being proactive, then again, you're scrambling at the end because something came up.
So how does sort of modern print and document workflows support better patient engagement?
Yeah, actually, so maybe I'll take a story for this. We were talking to a health system who was looking for a way to improve one of their processes. That essentially how it worked is fax comes in and it gets put into a folder somewhere, and then at some point a nurse or someone else needs to go in and look at the fax and then determine what type of document it was, put it in the right place, and then maybe it gets taken care of at that point. And on the call with this customer, they brought up the list of the faxes that come in, and there's 2-week-old faxes that hadn't been looked at. And so if we talk about patient engagement, that's a very poor experience for the patient if they're waiting 2 weeks for their prescription to get looked at, or whatever it is. And so I think that automation helps to smooth out those processes that or excuse me, those lapses in keeping up with things, and helps to streamline it overall. And then I think I alluded to this as well, but just that ability to standardize the data that's coming in from patients even before they're at the clinic, so that they're not having to fill out multiple forms and work with multiple systems, and that type of thing is also a key improvement that we're seeing getting better all the time.
So speaking of advancements, maybe talk about what are some of the, financial implications of not keeping up with the technological advancements in clinical document workflow automation.
Yeah, sure. So I think when we talk about ROI, there's really kind of two buckets. There's hard costs and there's soft costs. From a hard cost standpoint, I mean, if you have a lot of paper processes, those are consumables that do cost you money in paper and toner and ink, and so there's that material cost. But then there's also the loss of time and effort that your own employees experience by having to do things that they don't really need to be doing, and that that costs money. That's extra headcount that you have to keep on hand because there are people that are doing unnecessary things, right? Or at the very least, allow them to be concerned about things that they're actually concerned about, and that will better serve the patient instead of keeping up with documents.
Okay, so I asked you a little bit earlier, about security and compliance. So this is one of my questions I wrote down here. How can healthcare providers ensure that their document workflows are not only efficient, but also secure and compliant with industry regulations?
Sure. So I think for one thing, maybe stray away from homegrown solutions. Those can be inexpensive and a quick way to get to a solution if you have the developers on hand, but they may be lacking in industry standards and the oversight that you would hope to have. But then also what happens when that developer leaves, right? So I think that's one thing that can get you in trouble from a security standpoint, and rather look to a vendor that offers robust proof of the security compliance that they use as they develop their software. So I think from just like a base level architecture standpoint, there's that. But then within a tool like Vasion Output Automation, we can also offer additional ways to know what's happening within the environment. For one, we can interrogate the actual data that's within documents and then make decisions on what to do based on the contents of that. So if we want to redact the data that you didn't want included, or maybe we just don't print the thing, if it seems that it's suspect. And then in addition to that, tools like secure release, where a file isn't printed until someone comes up and swipes their badge, and off-network printing, so that you can securely route jobs across the internet, to affiliate clinics without needing a VPN, and tools like that, where you can really approach the security, your security posture from a multi-pronged approach.
Okay, what best practices would you recommend for unifying administrative and clinical print management?
For one thing, find a tool that can do it. That can be the difficult thing, and I say that as one of the products that can do that, or as one of the representatives for it. But that is a pretty rare thing, to be able to manage the printers and devices that are installed on your end user workstations, or maybe it's a cart that's brought around from place to place, and someone's logging in with an anonymous account, and then you still need to get those printers installed for them appropriately, even though they're initially logging in with an anonymous account. And there's issues like that you get on the front end that have to be dealt with. But then on the back end, or like the application side of the EMR, that is a different ball game, where you need to be able to handle high volume documents, or high volume print jobs that are flowing through those, and performing different types of automation on them and ensuring they get where they need to go. That's often a different focus, right? And so customers find themselves in situations where they have to own two different products to be able to manage those two environments. But with a tool like Vasion, you can deploy queues out to the front end. You can manage all the back end printing through output automation, and approach it from a holistic standpoint, right, where you don't need different applications to manage that. And then outside of just the solution standpoint, as far as the best practice, make sure that you have a plan for maybe standardizing the definitions of your print queues and the other devices out there, so that someone's not making a change in for their Epic print jobs that affects someone's printing from their end user device. So just a little bit of planning on that front also goes a long way.
Makes sense. Okay, so there's a lot at stake here. How can healthcare organizations create comprehensive audit trails to maximize visibility across their document workflows?
Yeah, so for any steps or documents that are passing through Vasion's products, we audit that all automatically, right? So one answer to the question is use our product. On the other hand, there's going to be cases where other applications are involved, and so I think that there's just a strategic approach that needs to be taken there to know, again, what metrics or what changes or in auditing events are you looking to track, and is there a way that you can standardize those maybe to one place? And I don't like recommending kind of scripting or custom solutions, but in some cases that might have to be the case if you want a single view for it. But I think that the better way is to use a holistic platform that provides this connective tissue for it.
Okay, can you share some examples of how optimized document workflows have positively impacted patient outcomes in some real world scenarios?
Yeah, I think for this, maybe I'll return to the example that I gave that I didn't finish off, of the incoming faxes, where they're just going in a folder and they have to be categorized. What we would look to do instead is pass those files through an OCR service, an optical character recognition service, to identify any handwritten characters and know what's actually on the page, and then use our workflow process to identify what's in the document and then categorize it automatically, and then send it to where it needs to go without someone having to manually check, right? And within that, we can set a confidence level threshold. So if we're only 80% sure that this file is this particular category, then we send it to approval. rather than automatically making a decision on it. So, in those cases, we may not completely reduce the manual steps, but if we can reduce it by 95%, then that's still an incredible gain for that. So I think that's an example of where we actually saw that with a patient, where we could automate that entire process and not only improve the experience of the clinicians of not having this extra task of going in and looking at a bunch of faxes, but also the patient experience.
Fascinating. Okay, what are I don't know, the key metrics or indicators healthcare organizations should monitor to evaluate the effectiveness of their document workflows?
Yeah, I think three kind of main categories. For one, doing tracking over the time savings. That would take a little bit of foresight in tracking it before you made the change, right? And seeing the amount of time it takes for maybe just a type of document on average to make its way to its ultimate destination, and then monitor that as the changes are implemented to see and track improvements there. And then in addition, or kind of in tandem with that, the number of manual versus automatic steps that are used from like an end-to-end process. Anywhere that we can reduce those manual steps is where we'll want to kind of hone in on, and that's a good way to identify the gaps in existing processes. And then lastly, I guess this is related to the first one, but what is the duration of the workflow, and then how can we shorten the amount of time to getting to whatever outcome we're looking to achieve with it?
Okay. I can't do one of these without asking the AI question. How do you see AI and machine learning playing a role in the future of clinical document workflows?
Yeah, so I think there's a few key areas where AI plays really well in. AI is it's the you said it, it's the thing to talk about right now, but I also think it's shoehorned into areas where it may not necessarily belong as a result of that excitement. And so I think that it's you need to take a careful look of where it's being applied, and in particular, what is the what's the word I'm looking for? How important is it that the answer is correct versus more of a suggestion? And so as far as the correctness, there's ways to get around that. I mentioned it before. You can go off of a confidence level and make a decision based on that. But as far as some specific examples, I think that classifying of data that we talked about, just in the last example of looking at the contents of a document and then making a decision about what type of document it is or what the contents are, using a confidence level and then making a decision based on what's in there. And in the example I gave, it was to classify the document as a certain type and then send it to its appropriate final destination inside an EMR. But that could also be, is that protected health information that we shouldn't send? Or do I need to change this one word to this one so that it's appropriate for this destination? Like and we can get flexible and customizable in what we do with that. But I think that that's an area where AI plays well to help with those decisions. And then in another way too, I think providing suggestions based on the performance that we see with the different workflows, right? Like starting to see areas where there are hangups in processes and recommending, potentials for, changes or improvements based on that, and more along those lines.
Okay. What are some of the steps that organizations should take to make sure that their document management systems are future-proof and scalable?
Yeah, so I think for this, to revisit one of my previous answers, don't make your own solution.
Right.
That's not the way to make it scalable
Right.
and future-proof. Choosing something that's cloud-based again is just so important for that, because you're not having to rip and tear out something that you're hosting, right? So I think that there's that, and then one of the more modern architectures is just making things more modular, so that you can pull and replace things without the need to completely reformat everything, because it's all tied into one long, spaghetti stringed, process. So I think that, keeping that in mind as you plan your processes is also important to create that separation and modularize it.
Okay. Here's a question I like. How can healthcare providers balance the need for automation with the importance of maintaining a human touch in patient care?
I mean, I think that if you're doing automation right, I think it's more that you're allowing your clinicians to focus on the things that matter more for their patients, more than taking away that human touch. And I think that you hear about things with AI maybe doing more patient outreach and things like that. And I don't I don't know the exact quality of that, but for me, that's the area that I would focus on, as much as reducing the manual steps that aren't patient facing, that are the more mundane things, so that it creates those opportunities for a better focus on the things that actually matter.
Yeah, so the things that that would have sort of traditionally taken you away from FaceTime with your patient.
Right. Yeah. And again, like looking at a bunch of faxes to decide if they're a prescription or not, right? Like that is not creating better patient care, and you hate it too. You don't want to be doing that either. So I think that's more the way that I see it, I think.
Okay, what roles do vendors and third-party providers, such as yourselves, play in the successful implementation of automated document workflow?
For one thing, we talk to a lot of patients, so a lot of health systems, right? We talk to a lot of different customers that are just like you, and we've seen the challenges that they've gone through. And so, it's my hope that we could work together as essentially a consultant, type relationship, where even if it's not our product, I want to recommend the right solution, for you, and kind of work together on that. So I think that earning that trust is just vitally important. And if you're going to make changes to the clinical environment, there has to be a large element of trust in there, because it's a critical thing, right? We can't break Epic, because that breaks the health system. And so we use our expertise for one. And then if your environment is particularly complex, I take that a step further. We offer technical account managers and professional services too, where we could take that load and provide maybe the initial implementation or ongoing support. Though we hope that we're simplifying things enough that isn't really necessary. And I think it's a pretty rare time that we actually have the technical account managers. And then I think that the other thing that vendors need to do is provide a secure solution, right? Kind of going back to, if a health system wants to try to create their own solution for something like this, they also need to solve for the security. And obviously that has to be a consideration as you're buying a product. But we're getting FedRAMP certified right now. We have the ISO 27001. I'm not sure if I'm saying the right one, the right numbers, but we have robust security certifications that we've put a lot of effort into getting, so that our customers don't have to worry about that side as much.
Okay, so how can organizations train their staff effectively to adapt to new digital automated document management systems?
Yeah, so I think that, for one, have a plan. That sounds pretty basic. I would say that most customers I've talked to have do, but make sure that you have a plan. I would generally recommend, this depends a little bit on how significant of a change you're introducing. It may be worthwhile to pilot, at one place initially, and do a phased approach to rolling this out, and almost like a beta test, right? With a smaller group, and get their feedback, and then smooth that out, so that you're not finding all the mistakes at scale all at once. And then I think the other thing too is, as far as training their staff, is don't forget the follow-up. And that's the follow-up in training, but also the follow-up in monitoring that your staff are adopting the changes or the workflows that you've introduced. And if they're not, then that's your cue for a refresher. So I think that forgetting that return is a common problem.
That is great advice. And so I'm going to ask you for some more. What are some practical strategies that healthcare organizations can adopt to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to this kind of clinical document workflow management?
So I think as far as staying ahead, I think it really just comes down to having the plans to be proactive. And I think that if you don't have a systemized plan for how you're going to do that, then it's not going to happen. And so I think that's really the key thing is to plan ahead, or to stay ahead, you need to plan ahead.
Makes sense. Before I get to, we got some questions from attendees. We definitely want to get to. I know you brought some more slides. Did you want to? Is there anything else you wanted to point to before? Because I've asked the last of my questions.
No, I think that's, I think we can move to the Q&A.
Okay, we good? All right, let's go to the Q&A. Remember, folks, you can ask your questions at any time. We'll do our best to get to all of them. You sort of touched on this, but Lynn is a regular attendee. Hi, Lynn. So I'm going to ask that question first. Can you share examples of how these manual processes have led to operational inefficiencies or errors in clinical environments?
Yeah,
errors in a clinical environment, sorry.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, using my my example of you go into the doctor's office, you have a big stack of papers to fill out, and maybe even you did fill out the forms online ahead of time, but then you still have to fill them out when you actually go to the office, right?
Right.
And I think that has a direct impact on the patient, but then those manual forms, maybe you have an OCR solution for when those get scanned in, or paper forms. Maybe you can categorize them. You have a solution for that. But a lot of the times too, someone is looking at that and they're either keying it in or they're scanning and have to classify. And that type of manual process really adds up as you go to scale. So I think that, that's just an example.
Awesome. Okay, we've got one here from Doris who's asking, how can one make use of the clinical print and document workflow in my organization? That's a little bit too general, Doris. If you'd like to rephrase that, we'll give it another shot. Here's one from Vic who's wondering, what is the implementation process like for output automation?
Yeah, so as far as implementing our own solution, the process would go essentially as follows. You would fill out a really basic form with just maybe your name and your email and that type of information to initially create a Vasion instance. So that gets made pretty much immediately. And then after that point, you just need to have a device ready that's going to run the output service. The output service does run within your environment, and that's to keep your documents within your own infrastructure, right? We're not sending your data up to our cloud. And so you would have that box ready to go. There's a executable that will install. It takes maybe a minute to run through and install. And then inside of our actual administrative console, you would just create a object for the output service, fill out again just some things like the DNS name, put in a certificate for it, and then save that. And then on the box where you installed this software, it's going to check in. It's going to see that it's supposed to be running output, so it's going to just download that automatically, run it, and that's it. At that point, we're listening for any documents that could be sent from an EMR or other application. And the only thing that would be left to implement at that point is creating your print queue objects, which we can do in bulk or one at a time, depending on how many we need to create. So as far as the change or the implementation within our own application, I can do this install in about 20 minutes. As long as you already have a certificate ready and a server ready. The biggest complication generally comes from the changes that you need to make inside of Epic or inside of Oracle Health or whatever that is. Not to say that it's a huge lift, right? But that might there might be more teams you have to work with to get some of those changes made, so that can take a little longer. But I mean that's pretty much it.
Fascinating. Okay, here's one from Tori, who's wondering, what do you feel are the key factors to driving zero trust security across print and document workflows?
Yeah, so as far as the drive behind zero trust, it really comes down to I want to give people access to the applications that they're authorized for because of who they are, not where they are within the network, right? So if you think about your home network, if you get on your home Wi-Fi, you can talk to your device can talk to any other device on your Wi-Fi network, right? You're within the network. That has generally been the principle with corporate networks, or within health systems as well, where once you're on the corporate Wi-Fi, or if you're plugged into an Ethernet cable, you can reach almost anything in the network, right? That's a pretty big security gap, and if a hacker gains access to one of those systems, well, now they can talk to any other systems. So zero trust kind of wants to negate that risk and instead segregate all of the different network objects from each other, and instead only provide access based on users. So there has to be an authorization, and as far as our product specifically, we can take into account who the user is before we allow them to install any printers, so they can't send jobs, and same thing with secure lease. And so we kind of take those same principles and allow you to cut off the network and then introduce the ability to authenticate for sending print jobs. And we don't need to get too into it, but with our off-network feature that allows you to securely route those documents to a printer without needing to have direct line of sight between the sending device and the printer. So you can also still create that network separation.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, we've got another question here this is from Ria, who's wondering what's the difference between output management and output automation?
Yeah, good question. So output management is sort of the industry term, right, for the type of product that output automation is. And that said, the reason that we went with output automation, actually our product used to be called output management, but we really wanted to distinguish it because we have that automation engine to take the extra step to not only just make sure that files get to their end destination, but also the ability to make changes to that document or send it in to our workflow engine so that it can be used as a part of a signature, right? Like we provide that integration point to the rest of our automation services so that it has that holistic view where everything works together and you can just have that connectivity and interoperability that you need.
That's all the questions we have. And so that's all the time we have for this Tech Talk. I want to thank our speaker, Ken Mickelson, for an absolutely fantastic and informative conversation. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet. And many thanks to the folks at Vasion for making this conversation possible. We absolutely could not have done it without you. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.